Hey, everybody. Hope you're having a great 2025. We have a very special request of you. The Charleston City paper is now taking nominations for their Best of Charleston 2025. We would like to be one of the nominated podcasts, so that's how you can help us. If you would be so kind as to go to www.vote.charlestoncitypaper.com, scroll down to the Culture, Arts, and Entertainment section, and you will be able to write us in as a nomination. Please write us in as the Shrimp City Report and enter. You will have to create a login, but the Charleston City paper will not be following up with any kind of other messaging or spam or anything else. This is a totally legit paper that we're all fans of in Charleston, and it would really, really be special to be featured as one of their nominated podcasts. So if you could help us out, go do that, and here's the show. Hey, everybody. Welcome to the Shrimp City Report. My name is Devin. I'm joined with the co-host, DJ. How are you doing, DJ?
Great. Had a good New Year break. Ready to start off the new year with a new guest.
That's right. Yeah, one we've been trying to get somebody that I've known for a few years. Kally Knight. Where are you hailing out of now, Kally? Summerville?
Yeah, well, I'm up in Holly Hill now. So I moved out of Charleston. Just got to be a little bit too much. So I moved out of the country a little bit. My daughter goes to school up here. So, and I kind of came up here. I started coaching the softball team.
Oh.
Yeah, just kind of, doing the country thing, man. My family is from up in this area. So they're from like Harleyville, Holly Hill, Orangeburg area. So I've got like tons of family up here. But yeah, I mean, it's definitely a different pace than what Charleston was for sure, but I'm enjoying it. I can't complain.
Yeah, Kally is I know him best from musician and a promoter of entertainment shows in the Lowcountry. So that was why we wanted to get him on and talk about that. But kind of interested in your coaching softball. Do you have a sports background? What was your upbringing like?
Yeah, well, I mean, so I grew up kind of all over the place. My dad was in the Air Force, so we were kind of moving around. I played pretty much every sport. I played hockey, football, baseball, soccer, everything. And then I graduated high school in Maine and had a hockey scholarship up in Maine, but then decided that I wanted to kind of move more into warmer weather. So, because when I say Maine, I lived like about 20 minutes from Canada. I mean, you can see the border from like where I was. Yeah, way up there. Just cold winters. But yeah, so I left kind of the hockey scene and played baseball at Carolina. And then I went over and started playing baseball at Francis Marion. I transferred over there, got out, and I started kind of coaching like kind of immediately. I went in to coach baseball at a school called Dorchester Academy, which is up here in St. George area. And then I was there for like a year. Then kind of got pulled into the public school system. So I went to go coach the baseball team at Hanahan. And when I went there, they already kind of had like the baseball coach was supposed to be kind of retiring and moving out. And I was just, going to be his assistant for like a year. And then he decided he was going to stay for a little bit longer. So they asked me, they're like, yeah, you want to do, the JV team, or you can coach the girls varsity softball team. And at the time I was like, I don't know, 24, 25 years old or whatever. And I was like, well, and they were like, hey, it pays more. You'll be like the region rep and you probably have a really good team kind of coming up. And I was like, all right. And so I took it and immediately kind of fell in love with that sport more than baseball. It was just like, faster pace, that kind of thing. So I coached there for like 6 years and then kind of backed off of it for a while. And then my daughter kind of came along. I didn't really kind of coach anything for a long time. And then she decided about 4 or 5 years ago that she wanted to kind of get involved with sports again. And so I kind of was like, picked up a softball with her and she always, kind of took it and ran with it. And so the opportunity opened up for her school was looking for a softball coach. So I kind of came in there and took it over and we won a state championship like 2 years ago. And
Cool.
I have a pretty good chance at winning another one this year, so we'll see. But that's kind of. I mean, my brother played football at Auburn. Sports kind of all over my family. Just everybody's kind of done it. So.
Oh, right on. Is that a hockey sweater you're wearing right now?
It is, yeah.
I saw the laces.
Yeah, it's a Massachusetts State Police hockey.
Oh, right on. That's cool.
Yeah. I like
that's
that
my favorite sport, man. I love that sport more than anything. It's so awesome,
Yeah. Yep. I like that you were living in Maine and just like, you know what? I'm fine never seeing snow again. I'll move to the Carolinas.
Yeah. Well, and here's the messed up thing though. So my daughter, she absolutely hates the heat, like can't stand it. And so does my wife. They're just like, they're done with the South. And my daughter just got accepted to Penn State. So she's
the Lions.
And so she's leaving, and now we're like, all right, well, maybe we gotta head up there for a little while. So we might have to jump back into that snow again. I don't know. It won't be as bad as Maine. I mean, that was like that part of Maine I lived in was, like higher, it was further up north than probably half of Canada. It's like up there, but yeah. And it's like that. It would start snowing up there in September and wouldn't stop until like April. I mean, it's just ridiculous.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
Do you ever go to like the Stingrays game and are like, these Southerners don't know how to play hockey?
It's actually like, I went to the very, very first Stingrays game ever. Like when they brought that team into town, I was like, oh, hell yeah. Cause there was no hockey here for like the longest time I was here. And, it was like, I think they started in 93. So I was down here. I graduated high school in like 91. I moved down here and I was like, man, there's just no hockey. And then all of a sudden the Stingrays kind of popped up with that team. And I was like, heck yeah. So yeah, I love it. And I go to games, at least I try to go to a couple games a year, but yeah, it's just a cool atmosphere. I just love that sport so much.
Yeah. We're big fans of, we went to a couple last year. Yeah. We really enjoyed it.
It is weird though, growing up in the South and just never thought of hockey being south of the Mason-Dixon line, even though Atlanta had, teams for a while. It seems unnatural.
Yeah. And it's like the Southern teams are like winning the Stanley Cup all the time. I mean, it's like, what, Florida, Tampa Bay, Carolina. I mean, it's like, and it's hard to kind of imagine that when you see, when you've all been used to seeing Chicago, Detroit, Boston, New York, all those guys kind of taking it. It's like,
yeah, I know. And I like seeing the old time. I like, the Bruins winning is always good, except for that just choke job they did. Anyway, I digress.
Yeah. I was pretty upset about that one too.
Yeah. So you went to South Carolina for school and you played ball there?
Yeah. I went there for about I only went there for about, I went for about a year and then I transferred out and then I went to University of Salkehatchie, which is a branch off of South Carolina. It's in Allendale. It's kind of a junior college. And I think it was just cause I graduated from a school that I graduated with 63 students in my class. So going from a small school like that to Carolina was just a really big culture change for me, so I wasn't really ready to kind of tackle that, I think. And I could definitely see my grades were slipping and things like that. So when I went to junior college, I finally started to get my feet back under me and then transferred out, went to Francis Marion and finished up there. Yeah.
Yeah, good. I meandered a long time to get my undergrad so I can commiserate. And I mean, it's not for everybody. Devin did well in academics and did great in college and stuff, it's just.
I also kind of did like a 2-year community college thing just to get my basics out of the way and build up my GPA. So that helped a lot.
Then
it's going to be, I know for my daughter, her class, so she goes to Holly Hill Academy up here and it's like, I think her senior class has 13 people in it. Mm-hmm. So going from 13 to whatever, I think Penn State has 12,000 incoming freshmen or whatever, some craziness like that. Yeah. I don't even know she's going to she doesn't know what she's getting involved in, but I was one of those things when she saw, we did a whole New England tour of a bunch of schools. And when she walked on that campus, you could just see her eyes just kind of hell yeah.
Oh, cool.
This is the one, I was like, all right. And if you're a sports fan, that's the place to go, man. I mean, they've got everything you want to watch. For sure.
Especially for wrestling, they're like 15 years in a row or something. But
yeah,
we're talking.
I've heard it's wild up there with wrestling. I heard the students just go nuts at that thing.
Yeah, and Devin went to ETSU. He did the right thing tried at Tech and then getting a scholarship to East Tennessee State. So
that's the way to do it, man.
It is. Yeah. It is. So after the ball, I know you're a musician as well. We can talk about some of your bands. When did you get interested in music? Was that always a thing for you?
Yeah. I mean, I didn't really grow up a lot around music. It was kind of weird. Like my dad is, he kind of introduced me to some bands. He was back when the earliest I can remember was he had cassette tapes of like, Deep Purple and Def Leppard and Kiss and things like that. And I was kind of like, I was a little interested in it, but not too much. And then when I got into like, I think it was like middle school, I met a couple guys that were just into like this punk rock scene, and they were listening to stuff like Minor Threat, Dag Nasty, and even some metal stuff like Anthrax and Stormtroopers of Death. And I just, for some reason, I just like latched onto that. I don't know what it was about it, but I mean, it just had, I don't know if it was just like the difference of it, or, cause a lot of kids were listening to, back then it was a lot of AC/DC and stuff like that. It was like the big band, at least where I was from. So yeah. And punk was just really kind of doing it. And then I know you guys probably heard of Biohazard, but the singer of Biohazard, Billy Grazade, he was actually from my high school. And so he was in these like really like underground kind of punk rock bands before he did Biohazard. And so he was playing these like small clubs. There was flyers always going around our school. And I was just like, man, this is just such a cool like culture. So I kind of latched into that, and I started picking up guitar a little bit and, just playing in these really, really shitty punk bands when I was, in high school. And then I kind of got away from it when I went up to Maine. My dad transferred from New York to Maine, so I went to Maine. When I got up there, I kind of started picking up like skateboarding, BMXing, snowboarding, things like that, and started kind of getting into music a little bit more. Started playing in a little bit more bands up that way, and then when I moved to South Carolina, it was just once I got through kind of school, I answered an ad in back in the day they had those free times papers.
Yeah.
I answered an ad looking for a singer, and I was like, all right, man, I'm going to go try it out. And I jumped on this, went and kind of auditioned for this band that was playing in some kind of like storage unit behind a roller skating rink or something. I went out there and tried it out, and I was like, I loved it, and started kind of playing, and I just kind of got the bug. And then from there on, it just kind of took off, and then when we started, I think I started Quench kind of like right after that, and then things just kind of blew up from there. So yeah, it's definitely been in my blood for me. I mean, it's just like one of those things when you play on stage and stuff, you get that bug and it just kind of takes you over,
Yeah.
Where was that roller skating rink? Is that interesting?
It was on Rivers Avenue.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. It was like, God, what was that? At the time, there was this like male strip club kind of like right there. It's now a church, but it was like right there on Rivers. And there used to be like a Arby's and like Schlotsky's Deli. And there's
I know where that is.
Okay.
I know exactly.
Yeah, I think I know that area. Yeah.
Yeah. There's a storage unit right behind that. And then there used to be a roller skating rink behind that. So yeah, we used to practice in that little storage unit area.
I think everybody's done that. When I had a 1989 or 90, I was in a band. We practiced in the storage units behind Hot Wheels Skate Center on Folly Road.
Oh yes, I know what you're talking about.
Yep.
Yeah. So, I think every band's had to do that storage unit thing, man. And you definitely your ears definitely take a beating from those kind of practices, those places for sure.
I wish somebody would have done a retrospective over the decades of people doing that and see, because some of the spaces that I saw were pretty pimped out, Oh, yeah. I mean, power run through lights, all kinds of stuff, Oh
yeah. We used to hang carpet up in there. I mean, yeah, you make it as comfortable as you possibly can, because I mean, if you try to play in one of those things with just no padding on the walls, I mean, it's just this wall of sound you've never, you're never going to recover from,
Mhm.
you know? So we were constantly putting like, carpet up or, kind of dressing it up. So it felt like really comfortable when you're in there kind of writing songs and stuff like that, but I think I'm kind of over the storage unit days. I don't think I'll ever go back to that kind of stuff again. I'm like, if I'm playing music, it's like, all right, let's go, either figure out somebody's garage and make it nicer or something. But yeah, not the storage unit stuff's just loud.
Yeah, you're right. You're actually on the right track. Yes. Garage, somebody's spare bedroom, buy a studio.
So you start picking up music. I assume we're playing. What were some of your inspirations? What was the local scene that you were going to? Any notable like venues or shows that you went to when you were young?
You talking about in Charleston?
Yeah.
Yeah. So in Charleston, so the big bands at the time when I was kind of getting involved in the music scene were a band called Mother Fist that was really, really good. Shaman Mary, Sheldon, Children's Choir, Wormbelly. Those were kind of the bands that were really starting to like, do some really cool things around the area. And it just so happened. So I don't know if you guys remember this, but 96 Wave used to have a kind of a locals only segment. It was really, really cool what they were doing at the time. They would play like 2 or 3 local songs like 3 times during the day. It wasn't like a set show at night, but they would do it at like, 12 o'clock in the afternoon and maybe one more at like 3 or 4 o'clock in the afternoon. And then another one like 7 or 8 o'clock at night. And they would just kind of showcase local bands. And, at the time, Jump Little Children was kind of being promoted on that show, as well as like Hootie was kind of starting to do their thing. And they were also putting, you might hear Children's Choir, Shaman Mary, but there was also like Uncle Mingo and some of those other like good local bands around the area. So when Quench kind of got together, we just kind of went and recorded a demo. And it was back when I was like really super inspired by Tool. And if you listen to that first record, you'd probably be like, yeah, that's a Tool cover band, pretty much, I was trying to sound like him, everything. And it was kind of the thing that I was like listening to at the time. And so we recorded a demo and we sent it in, and they immediately started playing us on that local show. And I just thought it was the coolest thing in the world. I mean, the first time you ever hear your song on the radio, it's just like, euphoria, you freak out and you're calling everybody. And so what we were doing at that time is anytime it got played, we were calling all our friends and, hey, call in 96 Wave and request our song. And we'd even call up 96 Wave and disguise our voices and be like, hey, you got that new, trying to get as many people as you can to call in. So yeah, and it eventually caught the ear of the bass player and singer of Children's Choir. His name's Kevin Isaac. And he called us up and was like, at that time they were already playing the Music Farm. And he said, you guys want to come out and play? And so our first show was actually, we did like a birthday party, was like our first show. And then our second show, I think, was at the Music Farm.
Wow. And what has the Music Farm since then? Because, I was born 1993, so I'm not exactly up to date. What was the Music Farm like since then? Or how's it grown since then, I guess?
Oh, I mean, to be honest,
is it pretty much like the same venue?
Back then it was a dump. Like it was, 3 inches of piss in the bathroom and, it was just a nasty, nasty place. But, it was back then it was run locally. It wasn't bought out by these big promoting companies like Live Nation and stuff like that. So a lot of, Jimbo Webb was the kind of the manager and was really, really kind of, into the local scene. So he was booking a lot of local music in there. And I mean, and for the most part, the local bands were really kind of keeping the lights on in that place, And, we started out, we didn't do too well there for a little while. And then he kind of told us like, hey man, you guys need to, get a following before I can kind of keep putting you back in here. And I'm glad he did it because it kind of lit a fire under our ass. Yeah. And then we started playing a venue called The Warehouse, which was on East Bay Street. It was kind of upstairs above Wet Willie's. Do you guys remember that at all? Yeah, it was like above Wet Willie's. It was like really cool spot. I mean, it was just a fun place to play, really kind of dimly lit, but and that's kind of where we started really kind of cutting our teeth. And then we started doing this promotional thing where I haven't seen a lot of bands kind of do this. I don't know. I don't want to say we kind of invented it, but we we started basically kind of passing out free tickets to our show. We didn't care for money. We were just kind of, hey man, we just wanted to make sure we got people kind of in the door, you know? So we would print out so the warehouse used to hold probably 200 tickets. We would probably print out 1,500 of them and pass them all out. We would sit in the College of Charleston and just pass out these free tickets to the show. And we thought about it as hey, we pass out 1,500 and, a small percentage of them shows up, then we sell out a show, and that's exactly what happened. It started eventually the show started selling out and then, we'd start seeing lines of people trying to get in. And then we just kind of took that concept and moved it over to the music farm because Jimbo kind of came back to us and was like, hey, you guys are selling out the warehouse, come over and try out the music farm. And so we upped that even more. We would, the music farm at that time was holding about 1,200 people and we were printing out 7,000, 8,000 and passing them out. And then we started getting that same kind of thing happen over there. And it was just we were starting to sell out the farm every time we played there. So, and then eventually we just kind of pulled the free ticket out and started charging people $25. It worked out our favor. So yeah, it was great, but yeah. And so, the music farm at one point was a really kind of it was a dumpy place, and it's definitely, you go in there now, it's a lot nicer, as far as the production and stuff like that goes, and it's not as packed and not nearly as hot as it was probably back in, the early 90s or whatever. And they've got a lot of cool stuff. I mean, the music farm's always been kind of the staple of Charleston. And now that kind of Live Nation's kind of got their hands in a little bit, we definitely see a lot of cooler acts in that place. But, I think sometimes the tickets can be a little more expensive than what I'd probably, charge people. But
I mean, they really have done a great job. It looks great. It was disgusting at one point, but and I played there since they changed it. It's really cool. It's really sweet that they did. You guys got popular. You're selling $25 tickets. You're getting popular in Charleston. What is the natural progression out of that? Getting on the road?
So we kind of a weird sort of situation started kind of happening. So it was kind of the perfect storm of things. Once the band was kind of playing pretty well and doing well as far as in our hometown, then the radio stations kind of started picking us up a little bit too. So 96 Wave was kind of spinning us on a regular rotation, and then 96 Wave kind of went away. I don't know, Clear Channel just kind of died out. And so 98 Rock was the new station that was going to pick up sort of the active rock kind of genre. So we sat down and we met with the program director. That's back in the day when you could kind of do that kind of thing. And we kind of sat down with him and we said, hey man, we'll give you exclusive rights to our music. You guys will get to spin us first more than any other radio station in town. And they thought it was just a great deal, and we said, hey, well, you guys can even come remote from our shows. And back then 98 Rock wasn't really, they were kind of lower tier. They weren't a very popular station. I mean, they were playing at that time, they were playing more classic rock stuff, whereas 96 Wave was doing more of the active rock music. And so when we kind of moved over there, when they switched over to sort of an active rock kind of format, we kind of told them hey, you guys can kind of remote from our shows, and our shows were doing really well. So they were like, hell yeah, we'll jump on that. They kind of started picking us up on rotation. So we had probably 5 or 6 songs that they were spinning on a regular rotation there. And they would come out to our shows. They would remote from our shows. And it really kind of picked up our audience a lot too. And so, that was kind of the next step. Like Devin, you were saying is we decided we were going to kind of go on the road. So we started playing a lot of regional shows. And I don't know if it was just the word spread about the band, whether it be the radio stuff or what was kind of going on. But eventually, we were playing some pretty sold out shows around the area, and we were opening for bigger acts. And then eventually labels started kind of getting some interest in us. And then that was kind of the next step. I think we all just kind of sat back and said, hey, that's what we wanted to kind of do.
Yeah. So kind of jumping, or I guess looking to the future a little bit, it seems like from an early age, being in a band, you were able to pick up on selling yourself and the band. Where did you learn that? Did you have any previous skills that applied to that, or was that something you just picked up along the way, feast or famine kind of?
Yeah, I think it was just kind of, well, the one thing I can say about Quench was that all five of us wanted to make sure that that band was successful,
Mhm.
so we were all like big promoters as far as our band goes. Like I said, we would sit down at the College of Charleston. We would have stacks of tickets, and there'd be the five of us who would just sit out on that campus for hours. Sometimes, we knew when the classes were going to be changing, and we were like, all right, we know like this place is going to get filled up with students, and we would just sit out there for hours and just pass out tickets and pass out tickets, and we would make sure that we made sure that we were that somebody in our band was somewhere, when
Yeah.
I say that, like we were always at shows. It didn't matter. It didn't matter if it was something at the Plex. We would sit outside the Plex and pass out tickets. I mean, we were, even back and then, hell, we had our CD. We'd even have like a Walkman and just sit out there with like headphones and a CD and just like put it in people's face and be like, listen to this, you know what I mean? Like, and so we just like promoted the hell out of ourselves. And when you have, five guys that are doing that all the time, because that's the one thing I see a lot of times, and especially in local bands now, is that you might have one guy that's in there that's really pushing the band. The other guys are kind of like, I just want to play, and that's, and that's cool. I mean, there's nothing against that, but if you want that, if you want that big kind of push, I mean, you need everybody to kind of buy into what you're doing, and that's,
Yeah.
I think all five of us were doing that. And that's what really and we just kind of thrived off that. I think we learned from each other, each one of us was coming up with a different idea of how to push the band and how to make it successful. And when you have five guys doing that, I mean, it becomes quite a big storm,
Yes. So you have me curious now, and I don't know if this is I guess, okay question. What was your worst idea for marketing the band? Was there any like stupid stuff that got shot down immediately or anything like that?
I'm trying to think, man. I mean, it might have been like some like, I mean, we always had we tried to make sure that we had good like intentions as far as like our merchandise and stuff goes. We wanted to make sure that it kind of fit our brand. I think we did a couple things where I think we did like a candlelight kind of thing at the music farm one time. It was like a thing. And I don't know. I mean, I thought it kind of went over like a wet fart, but like a lot of people thought it was cool, So, and I mean, we were like dressed up at one point, like priests and stuff. Like it was just like a weird kind of thing, and it just didn't fit, And it's like, but when you're in a band and you're trying to, especially, back then, a lot of labels were trying to put not only just, they were trying to look more at your image than they were at your music.
Yeah, I guess so.
That's where a lot of our downfall as a band started kind of happening, is that we had a label that was really interested in us, and they were, trying to like reshape our image a little bit, which is all right, but they were trying to put us in a gym, and we were having like, hey, we need you guys to get down to like 150. And I was like, dude, I haven't weighed 150 since I was like in 8th grade, man. You know what I mean? And I was like almost 30 years old. And I was like, nah, dude. And they want you to be young and at that time. And so, a lot of that stuff kind of can weigh in on your band, when you're not kind of expecting that, because I think we were kind of coming into our own, because we were trying out a lot of different things. And of course, like if you listen to a lot of the Quench stuff, you'll see the music definitely kind of progress into its sort of own. We started out as like a Tool sort of cover band, and then eventually I think we started kind of owning our own sound. And so, yeah, I mean, it was one of those things, man. It's just kind of you got to try to like get your image and all that kind of together. And so, yeah.
Bands still to this day think it's just, if they put something out on social media, then the world will come. And there's still something to be said about actual street work and leg work and getting clever and stuff on how you're doing that. I guess we can go and transition now into talking about promotion of music and bands. Was this another natural progression for you to want to go promote bands? And how long have you been doing that? Did you start off just kind of casual and then build it into night booking, or how'd that go?
Yeah. So I learned a lot kind of when we were dealing a lot with labels. We were dealing with a lot of pretty big labels and pretty big promotional companies and managers and lawyers and things like that. So I started kind of like just learning a lot from those kind of business standpoints. And I knew the Charleston, I mean, we had the music farm, but it was changing hands so many times that I knew eventually it was either just not, I don't know if we were going to ever get that kind of venue back or what, because it was like it shut down for, a year or 6 months, and then somebody would buy it, that kind of thing. So I started kind of learning a lot about just booking and just kind of making those connections. And then when Quench kind of just died out, I moved out to Houston for about a year just to kind of gather my thoughts. And then when I came back to Charleston, I was like, all right, I got a game plan of what I want to do, and I was just like, all right, I'm going to start reaching out to some venues and to some agents and stuff like that and just see what I can kind of start doing. And so I reached out to, I was already kind of booking a little bit of like local stuff, but it wasn't really kind of taking off and doing its thing. And then got involved with a couple agents and they started sending me bands. And the first band I ever booked was a band called Artemis Pile Driver. I don't know if you guys ever heard of those guys before.
I have heard of them.
Yeah, they were from Atlanta, and I think I paid them like $100 and like a pizza. And I was like, and I'd seen them at a show down in Savannah or something one time, and I was like, man, I'd love to see these guys in Charleston. And the agent kind of sent them my way, and at that time I was like, $100, really? And you don't really understand, you're just kind of sitting back like, that seems like a ripoff. And you don't really know if it's your money, and at that time I really didn't know how those shows were kind of go, but I ended up booking that show at the Oasis and it did okay. And then I started getting more and more from the agent was kind of feeding me some more stuff. He ended up feeding me In This Moment. Remember you ever heard those guys, right? And it was like right when they came out. So they were asking for $100 and a pizza. And I was like, all right. And I booked those guys on like a Tuesday at the Oasis, and it didn't go over really well. But eventually, like, I don't know if word kind of got around, but the Navy base they're the ones that they hit me up and they were like, hey, we got this venue out here that's just sitting out here. It's nobody's, using it. And they were like, hey, can you get us some acts in here? And I was like, all right. And so I reached out, and the Navy and the United States government's got they got really, really deep pockets. So
really?
Yeah, they were like, hey, can you get this band and this band and this band? And I was like, all right. And I reached out to the agents and I said, hey, I got a bunch of money for you guys, and can you send these bands to me? And they were like, yeah. And so I had to fly these bands down to actually they were like playing in Jacksonville, Florida. And so I had to fly into Jacksonville. And then all of a sudden, like, I just started kind of getting in tight with a lot of agents, and they started kind of sending me some really cool stuff. And then, yeah. And so I kind of broke off of that. I stopped being sort of a contractor with the Navy, and I just started doing, and that's when I just kind of did night booking. I was like, all right, I'm going to start doing this kind of as my own business, because I kind of had my in, as far as my foot in the door. So
that Navy thing blows my mind.
Yeah.
I mean, what a golden opportunity, but geez. And so how many venues were you booking for the Navy? Just the Jacksonville or what?
No. So I was doing the Joint Base Charleston. So they had a place up in Goose Creek called the Dive.
Oh, over in Red Bank?
Yeah.
Or off of Red Bank? Yeah.
Yeah. It's kind of, it's a public venue. I mean, it's not on, it's on, I guess, the base property, but it's not behind the gate. So
that's right.
The public could go to shows there. And so, it was one of those things like the Navy, the United States government didn't understand, like, hey, and it took me a while to kind of figure it out too. Like when you're booking these bands, an agent's going to send you, hey, this is what I want for this band, and it's kind of like buying a used car. You can kind of sit back and you can negotiate with them. You can sit there and say, okay, that band doesn't really do well in this market, like I'll offer them this, that kind of thing. The Navy was just like, whatever they want, give it to them.
Wow.
And so I was like, all right, man. And I mean, so that's where we were getting, at that time, I was getting like Candlebox, Vanilla Ice.
Yeah.
Who else was like Non-Point, Fuel, like all those guys were starting to play up there. And even some country acts that are like big now, were playing that place. And they were just throwing just tons of money at them and weren't even negotiating the price, man. And I could even it was cool because I could even set my kind of booking price, and which was like way more than probably what more, promoters usually get,
right.
So, but there were some pretty cool, memorable shows in that little spot. I mean, that place only held like 500 people, and, putting some of those bands in there, they were just selling out like crazy, but the Navy just wanted to keep kids on the base. That was just their main thing. They wanted their their students that were in the that Navy program, they were like, we need to keep these guys here. We don't want them going downtown and getting in trouble. So they were it was called like the MWR, the Morale Welfare Recreation Department or whatever. It was like, we'll just pay whatever to keep those kids sitting right here. So just book stuff that they want to see. And so, it was, and so I was booking Charleston, I was booking a base in Jacksonville, North Carolina, and then Jacksonville, Florida. So I was doing 3 different ones at the time. And as well as the Oasis and some other little small places around Charleston.
So curious with booking like that, music's always changing. It's always evolving. What type of research did you do when, I guess, figuring out, what people want to view? Is it one of those things where it's just you run into more bands and you're realizing, oh, this is the type of music people are listening to? Or is it more of having to do research? Is it kind of like a chicken or the egg type thing? If that makes sense?
Yeah. I mean, you have to definitely do your research in it. Like, I mean, I imagine if I relocated to, say, Burlington, Vermont, like, I don't know if I would really know kind of what's a good, what's a good demographic to kind of hit up there, whereas I kind of cut my teeth in Charleston. So I kind of knew who was being spun on 98 Rock, who was being spun on other radio stations. I kind of had my, my ear to the ground kind of as far as like what people were wanting to listen to and what was kind of getting popular at the time. So yeah, it kind of definitely let me have a lot of leverage with agents, because I could sit there and tell them because I'd have agents come to me all the time and be like, hey man, I mean, I got this band that's coming up and they're getting spun on 98 Rock. And I'd be like, really? Okay, cool. And I'd call 98 Rock and be like, are you guys spinning this band? And they'd be like, nope. I'd be like, well, there you go. And I would just call them and be like, no, dude, they're not spinning you guys. I promise. Like, you're lying to me or you don't even know what you're talking about, So it gave me a lot of leverage because I could sit there and talk the band down, into what was a reasonable guarantee. And then, I could put kind of a price tag on it as far as like tickets and stuff like that goes. So, I mean, it's one of those things like you definitely have to do your research as far as your town, and I still get a lot of stuff sometimes with agents who try to send me bands and I just, and I'll have to just kind of shoot them down and just like, hey man, I don't know if that's going to do well. And, not, and I'm wrong a lot of times, but for the most part, I try to, and some of the stuff like Devin, the Cro-Mags, when I had the opportunity to book those guys, I did that one for me. I didn't care who was coming to that show. I was like, nah, dude, I grew up listening to those guys. Like I never got to see him when I was a kid. And I was like, man, I really like loved like Harley Flanagan for whatever reasons. And so I was like, man, as soon as I got a chance to book those guys, like I'm on it. I don't care if it was like 4 people show up. That one's on me,
Oh yeah. And when you were mentioning about New York, and I guess you were there in the late 80s and stuff, New York hardcore was exotic to us. It was just shit in the magazines that we heard, because none of those bands ever toured in the South, so
right.
I have such an incredible love for that music. And damn, when I heard you had Sheer Terror coming this week, that was just popped me big time. So, so so 2020 or 2022, when did you start booking at this place in Summerville called Trolley Club? How'd that go?
So it used to be, I moved up to Summerville and I was kind of, I didn't really have sort of a watering hole to kind of go to and hang out at. And when I moved to Ladson, I saw there was a place over there. It was called Shooters. And that's what Trolley Pub is now. So Shooters was a little kind of bar there. And I started kind of putting some music in there. It wasn't like a lot of national stuff, but more just like local bands. But he was already kind of doing live music there anyways. Well, then he ended up selling the venue and new owners bought it, but they bought it right before COVID. And so right when COVID hit, they kind of shut down and they had already gone in there and kind of renovated the place out. And they were trying to turn it into a pool hall. And that's why they have like the 3 or 4 pool tables in there. So they wanted to be a pool hall. So when COVID kind of started to I guess, relax out, people started kind of going back out again, they were just not doing any business whatsoever. And so I walked in there and I was like, hey man, I can help you out and I can book some bands in here for you and let's see how it kind of rolls. And the owner was just super cool. And super into it. He was just like, yeah, let's try it out. And so we did a couple local shows there, it did really well. And then I was like, man, we gotta kind of build the stage and sound and lights, and you got to have something that kind of attracts those nationals to kind of want to come in your area. If you just, have a small PA, obviously they're not going to come in there, or at least if they do come in and play and it sounds like, like garbage, they're going to tell their agent like, no, we ain't going back there again. But so we built kind of a pretty cool like sound system, light system and stage in there. And then it attracted a couple, I think the first national I reached out to, believe was I Hate God. I can't remember if it was or not, but I think it was those guys. But the agent, I had actually worked with him over at the Oasis, but it was like, 12 years ago or whatever. And he, when I hit him up and I was like, hey man, is I Hate God going on? And I was like, I booked you guys before. And he kind of looked down and he was like, checked his files. And he was like, yeah, man, those guys did really well down there. And I said, yeah. And he's like, yeah. And you paid them? And I was like, yeah. And he was like, all right, let's try it out. So, and I think once you kind of get one or two agents that are like, yeah, this place is legit, the word kind of spreads because those guys are kind of tightly knit, they know each other. And I think, that's where we kind of started getting stuff like Agnostic Front and Murphy's Law and Cro-Mags and all that stuff started coming.
I can't believe I missed AF. That is just crazy. I can't remember what was going on. But
yeah, that was a cool show too, man.
I bet. So just for example, booking the Sheer Terror show, did their agents contact you, or is that a reach out?
Yeah, the agents reached out to me. It's the same agent that did I Hate God. I think he's the same agent as Sheer Terror. Yeah, so he throws me stuff like all the time. I have to kind of turn him down a little bit every once in a while. But he, he'll send me some really cool stuff, man. And so yeah, he sent me that Sheer Terror show, and I was like, yeah, let's try it out, man. And I think it's gonna be. It looks like it's gonna be pretty cool. I mean, they're selling pretty good advanced tickets right now. So I think it's going to be a banger, man. So, and hopefully when you get those hardcore bands, like especially those old school guys, man, they start talking to their old school friends, and all of a sudden, next thing you know, you got like a wave of really cool stuff kind of coming to town. So,
oh yeah, for sure. And listen, Charleston's a hell of a place to come. I know most of them come just for the night or whatever, but it's a nice place, man.
Oh yeah, man. And I mean, and we try to treat the bands good. I mean, and that's the thing. If they come in and they play in front of a good crowd, they sound cool and they look cool on stage, and you treat them good and you give them some hospitality, and then they'll definitely want to come back. And that's what we kind of try to do. I try to make sure that the bands are treated like how I wanted to be treated, and so, and usually it's a, pretty good thing, and they kind of see it's a little bit smaller club maybe than what they're used to, but the fans are like right in your face. And I love that kind of environment more than I'd rather play bigger shows sometimes. I think a lot of bands kind of lose that mentality, especially like locally. I see a lot of bands, which, going back to like kind of the local scene sometimes, but I'll see a lot of bands that will just put a lot of effort into the music farm stuff, and I'm like, that's awesome, but if you'd put that same effort into playing a show as small as like Tin Roof or Trolley Pub, you'd sell it out. And to me, I'd much rather play that show. You know what I mean? Like I'd rather play in front of like 300 packed kids in there than play a half empty music farm show.
Yeah.
And that's my mentality is just kind of like that. But that's I think what happens with a lot of these big bands. They come into town and they don't like with the Agnostic Front and the Murphy's Law show. That was one of the cool things about that show is that it was packed. They were right up on them, and I could even the guy from Murphy's Law was like, man, that was so awesome. Just like they're just right in your face, and I was like, hell yeah, that's what it's about right there. That's old New York City hardcore stuff.
Yeah, and I agree. That's a good space. What y'all do with the lights and the sound. I mean, I enjoyed playing there. I think, there's no lack of inspiration going on there. I'll tell you that.
Right.
So,
right. Yeah. It's a cool little spot. And I don't think North Charleston doesn't really have, or Summerville doesn't have a, place like that. I mean, you're down in Charleston, you can go to the Tin Roof and watch kind of those shows or a music farm or whatever, but Summerville doesn't really have that. And being from, you guys know from being in Charleston, it's hard to get people from downtown to kind of make that trip up to Summerville, and kind of vice versa, like they don't want to make that commute, whether it's, they don't want to drink and drive, which is cool. I definitely don't want that happening. But, and I think that's the reason, you have one of those venues up in Summerville and it kind of attracts that, and it's cool. And Summerville's got like a punk rock scene up there that's, different from downtown completely.
Cool.
And
I
you'll
can't.
see different faces up there for sure.
I can't wait to see them all come together for this show this Friday.
Do you have anything you want to plug? Obviously, we have the show coming up. What time is it again?
It's next? Or this coming Friday?
This Friday.
Yep.
And I think we're going to do, I think it's like doors at 7. We're getting ready to pop off at like 8. We got Sheer Terror, Strike Face, Circle Back, and Buried in Terror. A lot of terror going on there. So,
Okay, cool. And how can we reach you on social media or websites or whatever?
Yeah, you guys check me out on Facebook. That's kind of the only sort of social media I do, man. My wife's trying to get me into TikTok and I just refuse to do it. But but I'm trying to like get involved in Instagram a little bit more. But yeah, just go Kally, Kally, Knigst, kind of see what's kind of going on there. And night booking or night entertainment is kind of what we go on as far as, pushing some of the shows too. So yeah, and if there's any, bands that are out there that are looking for shows or want to reach out and want to play in the Charleston area, totally down with helping out.
All right. That sounds awesome. Well, we appreciate you coming by and chatting with us and enlightening or teaching us about the world of promotion and your band history. Otherwise,
Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, all right. And to everybody else in the Lowcountry and beyond, we actually do have listeners beyond. We'll catch y'all over the next few weeks with a bunch of more stuff. Otherwise, y'all be good, be safe, and have a good 2025. Thanks.